Hey everybody, it's Guy McDoodfellow, co-chair of the B-Sides Las Vegas Proving Ground track. Our next talk is entitled Gamification of Tabletop Exercises by Kelly Ohlert, who was mentored by Allan Friedman.
All right. Hi. Welcome to Gamification of Tabletop Exercises, playing D&D for fun and security. I'm Kelly Ohlert at Guardia on Twitter, and I'm going to talk to you today about how to use games in tabletop exercises. These exercises, they're scenarios meant to help clients test things like their incident response and business continuity plans, hopefully before disaster strikes. Why do I do this? Because I'm a longtime geek, tabletop role player, and scenario designer in my personal life. I specifically design independent tabletop RPGs. And that's kind of what I love to do, and I get to bring it into my work. I have been a lawyer, but not Joe lawyer, since 2005, so, I'm used to speaking, I'm used to herding cats, and I'm used to knowing when people are just not paying attention. And that's a big deal with these things, as you'll see soon. You can find me on Twitter at Guidia. So, what does this talk about? We're going to talk about what a traditional tabletop exercise is, what a tabletop game is, how do they compare, why are games more interesting, and how can we use games to improve information retention and thus security. So we're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the boring. Let's start with a little definition. The Department of Homeland Security defines a tabletop exercise as a discussion-based session where team members meet in an informal classroom setting to discuss their roles during an emergency and their responses to a particular emergency situation. Cool. I'm already half asleep and it's my own talk. All right, well, what's a tabletop game then? Well, a tabletop game is a group experience designed to get participants to solve problems by working together in an immersive setting. And as you'll see, the immersion is key. A tabletop exercise, as Homeland Security or FEMA or even a lot of regulatory bodies will tell you, is a more limited experience designed to test a specific scenario or situation in the quickest and most efficient way possible. Really, they're to confirm the status quo, not to move forward. RPGs, games, they move, they evolve, they draw you in, they make you solve problems together. And as you've heard me say, and I'm going to keep saying, they're a journey, and they make you take ownership of that journey so that you're not just dealing with the status quo, you're moving forward. Tabletop exercises have serious flaws. And we're going to get to those, but they do. Maybe the biggest one is that they're boring. Tabletop role-playing games are fun. Why? Because they encourage storytelling, they're collaborative, they're often something you'd actually want to do with your time. Lots of us are gamers. Those who aren't generally like to watch a good story on TV, read a good book, play a good game, something that draws you in. So why do we care about things we do in our leisure time, our copious free time that we all have? We care because we learn through play. We strengthen our ties when we take a journey together and solve problems. We make memories, and in the InfoSec sense of things, if we're making memories about what worked and what didn't on this tabletop journey, we're going to take that home and remember that before, during, and after the actual incident happens. So how are you going to be able to use this information to improve your existence? Well, I'm going to show you what a basic gamified scenario might look like and talk about how you might make scenarios you design or you need to run a little more fun and a little more useful like that. And I'm also going to go into 3 common tabletop exercise problems that I hit all the time and show you some gamified solutions and how they are better solutions than just check, check, check off the boxes of your plans. That being said, exercises are a big deal. There's a reason people use them. They are designed to test people or processes before the worst happens. They're, if done well, they're tightly designed. They're trying to just get you to practice with the trouble before it happens. And they're usually based on some sort of pre-existing scenario or documentation, and then it stays on target to make sure you hit all the high notes, to make sure you hit every point of your IR and disaster recovery plans. Great. They're also really great to help with regulatory requirements. SOC 2, FedRAMP, ISO, all of them require that you show that you've practiced and dealt with these plans. And as a rule, they expect to see a tabletop. ISO, in fact, says while it's possible to pass an ISO audit without a tabletop exercise, it's unlikely because you'd need evidence of lessons learned to meet the requirements. The other thing is that these exercises can be a huge deal. They can be really, really detailed. CISA every 2 years does Operation Cyberstorm, which is basically a War Games the movie LARP. Millions of dollars, multiple agencies scaring the crud out of people and doing their best to accurately simulate what the worst would look like. But generally speaking, ain't nobody got time or budget for that. So while exercises are kind of a big deal, they're not that great actually. As I've been saying, they're often more about checking off the regulatory boxes or making sure people have read the IR plan than exploring the possibilities of what could happen when things go wrong or when things go right. Tabletop exercises can also be really stressful because of the fear of failing. There's the fear of worrying you're going to look stupid in front of your boss or failing the audit. And that inhibits creativity, makes them less fun, makes them more forgettable, makes them not something people want to do, but rather something people just want to endure, or else whatever. And also they rarely use dice, and dice are really shiny, so that's another way that tabletop exercises are just not as cool as tabletop games. So let's talk about games. Tabletop games are pretty great, says I. They're designed to entertain by making people work together to solve problems. But just because you're entertaining someone, as we'll see later, doesn't mean you're not doing something useful. You're going to, if you're doing a tabletop game, you're encouraging novel solutions, and failure's always an option. They're more suspenseful than stressful. Stress is kind of defined as something, in this context, you just want to get over with. You don't want to look stupid in front of your boss, you want to pass the audit, great. Suspense is making people want to know what happens next, having them take agency over their role, wanting to be Sam and Frodo, trying to get the ring to Mount Doom. These are the kind of stories we remember. And tabletop games often use dice, which I have said before are shiny. And I'm not the only person doing these. Leslie Carhart here talks about running tabletop exercises and busting out a D20. This isn't something that just came out of thin air. People are doing this, but more people need to do it. Because TLDR, these things can be pretty cool. Look, if you're listening to this talk, if you're at this conference, if you're in this community, you're probably a nerd or have the potential to be a nerd. And we all want to have a good time. And if we can learn something nerding out together, all the better. And if you're one of the people who are offended by dice, you're probably listening to the wrong talk anyway. So, if they're really offending you, throw them at me. I'll catch them and I'll keep them. I keep talking about this stuff being fun. That's for a reason. Almost all creativity involves purposeful play. Quick bio of Abraham Maslow, a famous American psychologist. He's best known for the idea of the hierarchy of needs. You may have heard this. It says that in order to do something like learn, you first have to fulfill more basic needs like food, water, shelter, safety, and yes, joy and fun and interconnection. More recent science indicates that play is therapeutic and has been found to speed up learning, enhance productivity, and increase job satisfaction. So playing isn't something we should just do while we're kids. So let's play. Welcome to Fuzzbutts v. Fuzzbutts. This is not a typo. no matter how much you think it is. Fuzzbutts v. Fuzzbutts is an example of an overarching scenario I built for an internal tabletop to give people a jumping off point for some of the other stuff I'm going to be doing later. This world can be sort of summed up in like three sentences, 3 paragraphs maybe. Fuzzbutts.com is an up-and-coming cat picture aggregator site. Their application allows users to search for cat pictures by cat color, breed, size, and sassiness. Fuzzbutts claims that their deep purring algorithm harnesses the ability of real cats to recognize and hate each other, to allow for excellent feline sorting and discrimination that rivals a Google search. Fuzzbutts has a security budget of yes, but a small dev team and a corporate mandate that all InfoSec spending must be done by consensus. Their CEO is Billy Coulter, a woman not known for her social graces, especially on social media. Bam. This is a scenario. It's a funny scenario. I think it's funny. It says butts. It has immersive elements that draw you in. And they're silly. They're silly, but they're relatable. Here we have a startup with angel investors and a wacky CEO who probably just wants to pass their audit. So why do we care? Well, for one thing, if you're doing something like this, you can take a basic scenario with a company, a budget, and characters, basically, and take it in any direction. You want to do it specifically tailored to your client? Pull disasters off their risk register, or slash the budget, or make it not the CEO, but an employee who's exfiltrating data. Whatever, tune it up, draw your people in. If you're a player, you're laughing at this, hopefully. You're hooked. You want to see where this goes. Thus, in just a few minutes, we can put together a scenario and tailor it to a client's needs, but do it in an environment that grabs attention and gets people ready to go on a journey together. And this doesn't have to cost a lot. This isn't Operation Cyberstorm here. This costs nothing but time and creativity. But it can save you a boatload of heartache down the road when you've got people who are invested in your setup and your scenario, who have practice at dealing with the shit that's going to come up. So let's look at some of those things, some common tabletop problems, and how a tabletop RPG approach is going to improve them. Problem 1. None of these people have ever been in the same room together. I've run a ton of games that include PII breaches, and in all of them, never, not once, has anyone ever suggested getting legal involved. Even if they knew I was a lawyer. Even when legal was on the call in the tabletop. What? I'm not just saying this because I'm a lawyer and I want to be involved in anything. I actually would like to take a break. But what I'm saying is, people don't think that by having legal come in early, you can perhaps privilege some of the cleanup or make sure that the next steps you take are following the law, making things a lot easier down the road. But people don't understand what legal does, so they don't invite them in. So how do we get people to understand each other? Well, there's the classic idea of walking a mile in their shoes, or, in RPG terms, character classes. Why? By assigning each player a character class that isn't their work role, it makes them have to see things from a new perspective. This is an example of what character classes might look like in the context of the Fuzzbutts scenario. So you've got Billy Coulter, whose class is C-Suite, Minotaur Security, class security team, Fuzzbutts.com, see, 2 T's, direct competitor, not a typo, and that might be, a red team playing in your scenario. And you'll see that I've given each of them abilities. For example, Billy Coulter has the ability Budget of Yes, which meant in that game, at one time, that player could spend just once for something absolutely outrageous, but only once to affect the scenario. Eager Pen Testers was one of my favorite. Eager Pen Testers got the license to kill, which meant that just once in every game, they had the permission to nuke somebody's stuff from orbit. Like just take out a data center, take out a computer, do something just once. And then, Fuzzbutts has another favorite, the I just hate you so much, meaning that once a game, they were able to take a patently illegal action in order to get back at Fuzzbutts. Does it have to be this detailed? No. Could it be? Yes. Why do you care? Well, if you're a player, it's fun. It also helps you understand others' roles and allows you to feel agency and suspense in the story. From the company standpoint, character classes or something like them force your team to think laterally and start to understand what the other roles are. Practically speaking, having your people know who to go to for what in an incident response situation can be critical, both in terms of stopping the bleeding and in terms of the many thousands of dollars of cleanup consultants that you need to bring in if the incident isn't dealt with right the first time. So let's talk about another common tabletop exercise issue. One person's doing all the talking. This happens in almost every exercise. One person, whether they're a jerk or just this person, has all the institutional knowledge or is just doing all the talking or both. This person probably has been there longer than anybody else, and they probably do have all this knowledge. They're also probably the most bored person, and they really just want to check off all those boxes and get out of there. And everyone else is smiling and nodding off. As the owner or the security lead or even a player, you're wasting time and money in this situation. No one's learning anything. While you might have checked off your box, you're going to be the first with your backs against the wall when the revolution comes, meaning an incident, meaning money out of your pockets. And as the person who's running it, you really have no idea if anybody else knows how to do the stuff Captain Obvious is talking about, which means it's really hard to write your report and to explain where the gaps are, or even write something honest to an auditor saying, no, these people have it down. So again, as a company, you could be paying for a marginally useless artifact. So what do? Kill off their character. I call this the bad clam scenario. This is, you go, you're having this, you identify that Sally is that person with that knowledge. Take a break. Sally comes back from the break. Oh, geez, Sally, you had the bad clams when you guys all went for lunch. You're out for the rest of the game, and you get to observe. This can work really well for somebody that has a big ego, because you don't really want to insult the client or your coworker by saying, shut up, get out of here. But something like the bad clam scenario is a gentle way of sort of getting someone off stage. I've taken questions in other formats about what that player does now. Well, that person could take a well-deserved break or play what might be considered the least important role, coming back in and doing that. However, there's the danger you might have to kill him off again, which is actually going to take him off. And this is still a client service. This is still a team thing. You want to make people happy and get something done. So why is this cool to do anyway? Why do you want to do it? Well, as a company head or a security lead, you're going to find that this is switching people off, getting rid of this one talker is going to expose gaps in institutional knowledge and make people work together, or sometimes more importantly, show that they can't. So you can identify that, which makes it more efficient. You're going to get better regulatory compliance because you know what you need, you know where those gaps are, you can close them. And again, cost savings, whether we like it or not, it's the bottom line, in some ways. As a player, once someone's out, the stakes get higher and the game gets more interesting for you. And again, you're buying in more. You're wondering, crap, what do we do if Jim's out? And if you want to do something that's not as dramatic as bad clams, you can say, he's on a vacation in Bora Bora and has no access, whatever it is, but the stakes are higher because now you're thinking, what do I do if the coworker I lean on, if my mentor isn't there? The third scenario is the common issue of everyone being asleep. Like I was when I was reading the definition from Homeland Security of what a tabletop exercise is. Look, everyone is half asleep and expecting to go through a boring scenario with no impact. Hopefully you're not there now, but if you are, well, let me suggest that we should take a trip to Arizona Bay. Congratulations, I just dropped everything west of the Colorado River into the ocean. Phoenix is now oceanfront real estate. Sorry, Las Vegas people. Why? By opening with a truly catastrophic scenario, the players are going to be wide awake and out of their comfort zone. And I know that testing your business continuity plan probably wouldn't be your first concern in this scenario, but look, right now listening to me, you're awake, you're alive, I've got your attention, and we've come so far together before I nuked you from orbit. Why do we care? You know what? We care because these things absolutely can happen. Infrastructure is absolutely critical in an information society. And depending on what you do and where you are, your cog in the wheel may be necessary to get things back on track. If you weren't nuked, you need to know what happens when others are. You're going to see traffic spikes. You're going to see customer inquiry overload. You're going to see dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. And this could be your moment in the sun. Or you could end up being a vault dweller. It's up to you. But big things lead to big ideas. But you know what? Earlier I said that tabletop RPGs are less stressful. This doesn't sound stressful, does it? Well, I'm going to tell you it's not. It's suspenseful. You want to know what happens in the Arizona base scenario. You want to know what happens to Sam and Frodo. You want to know what happens in your journey, because learning needs to have taken place at the conclusion of a learning journey. Tabletop exercises are just that, exercises. Static moments in time that are intended to confirm the status quo, not to move forward. Tabletop exercises are a journey. They evolve, they move, they make you solve problems. They make you take ownership of a journey, and they let you take what you've learned home. And maybe in the next journey will be a little more interesting. So if you like this stuff, what can you do? Well, if you're in charge of running these things or designing them yourself, you can steal a few ideas from me or from some of the folks I'm going to talk about briefly in the next slide and spice it up. You know, you don't have to go full Arizona Bay, but you could say that, you know, AWS US East 1 is down, or you could say that, you know, I didn't die of bad clams, but, you know, is out to lunch and can't be reached, or whatever. You can tailor these things to what you need, but you don't have to have them all be, we were sitting in the office one day and we saw malware. Spice it up. If you actually have to do these things as a player, and you can, if you have the freedom, rock the boat during the exercise. Be the clam eater. Be the maker of the bay. Or find something a little more low-key that works for you, that makes it so that you're doing something that helps you understand what someone else is doing. Even if it's just asking a question from someone from C-suite, well, what would you do in this situation? Even if what you think that person would do is completely useless, just asking a question breaks you out of this exercise and makes you go on a journey with that person's character. But as I said, I'm not the only person doing this. Lots of people have been doing this sort of thing way longer than I have, and there's a lot of good stuff out there for you to look at if you want to try some of this. Some examples, there's Backdoors and Breaches, which many of you probably have heard of from Black Hills. It's like the seminal incident response card game. It's a lot of fun, hits on a lot of these topics, and, you know, it's kind of like a tabletop exercise in and of itself, but with shiny cards. There's Oh No's. Oh No's is kind of like a DM's module of a few IR scenarios. It's very class and character based. It's a lot of fun, very readable, very free. You might also want to check out Adam Shostak. He's a former Microsoft engineer. He's the author of Threat Modeling, Designing for Security, and he's a gamification of security deity. And then there's me, little old me on Twitter. If you check me out on Twitter, you're going to see lots of cats, lots of complaining, and some infosec, and you can always DM me or get in touch if you have any questions. The point is that there's a lot out there, and there's a lot in tabletop gaming that can help anyone in our industry who wants to practice what's coming ahead, to either prepare for techie doomsday or just for fun and profit. Thanks, everyone. I'll be here all the week.